So I'm Andrew Hernandez, and my dad is Gary Nordby. He's my dad. I call him stepdad. And so what happened was, I'll start off with a little bit of a short story. My parents met because my mom was his instructor in the military. You ready for a little bit more of a twister? Okay. My dad is a United States Marine. My mom is a U.S. Army soldier. So when we talk about military stuff, you might want to pick a corner of the house and hide, because sometimes the discussions get a little heated. But that's how they got. The way I remember it is, and I could be wrong, they were playing footsies underneath the table, right, and everything, so they got hooked up that way. But it was really funny because my dad, I don't know what he was doing, but he met my mom, and he said, you know, if we get married, we're going to go serve God. He wasn't serving God at the time. So we're going to serve God. So they got married, and we moved out to California here. We were in Virginia. Moved out here, and we got hooked up with Dr. Johnson. So let me explain who Dr. Johnson is. If Dr. Dufresne is the spirit pastor, right? Dr. Johnson is definitely the word pastor. I mean, he's just very intense, type A, get after it, full throat, in your face, just that type of pastor, okay? Yeah. And so we fell underneath him. And my parents, when I was explaining to Pastor, was this. It was as if my parents got hooked up, and the first thing they did was start to serve in the ministry of help. So that's one of the first things they did. So they got hooked up in sound. That's the first thing I know. So here I am, 7 years old or whatever, and I'm running cable. And for those of you who don't know sound, running cable is like one of the most important things you could do. And if you don't treat the cable right, you're gonna mess up everything, right? Yeah. So it's just one of those simple building blocks. And I remember running cable and helping the pastor build out the church, right? And then after that, my dad got onto the sound team. Then he got into the Word Bible College there. The Word Bible College is kind of similar to the Dufresne Ministries Bible College. Yeah, it's pretty similar. So they would have Monday, Tuesday night. Well, we would run around the church as a kid, right? Yeah. You know, because we'd go with them Monday and Tuesday. There'd be no babysitters, so they couldn't leave us at home. So they brought us to church, and then we would run around. And then we'd get in trouble running around, and they would stick us in the room. And in the room, there was the sound equipment, right? So then I ended up recording all the school classes for the Word Bible College. And mind you, it's at night. So we would go to school, we'd go like an hour off, right? And then we'd go to church, and then we'd go spend all night at the church. And we'd leave at like 11 p.m. You know, here's this 9-year-old kid. He's recording all these classes, right?
11 at night?
11 at night, yeah. We would leave at 11 at night, and we'd go home like 11:30. So when people have been playing, I'm like,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But that's what I was trying to tell Pastor last night. I'm like, that's my parents' legacy.
That's right.
That's my parents' legacy.
Amen.
That's my kids' legacy. That's how we started. So here I am, about 7 to about 14, recording all these classes, helping my dad do sound. We're doing sound for the back in the TV room. We're doing, you know, my mom is doing the tapes for the pastor. Yeah. We're recording the tapes. I mean, and then when CDs came out, whoa, that was a big deal. Right. Remember when CDs came out? Oh man, we were recording CDs and tapes. We're packing them up in boxes for Dr. Johnson to go out and preach. And you know, 11 o'clock at night on Saturday, show up 7 a.m. in the morning, you know, ready to go do sound again. And what I was trying to tell Pastor was that's how come I know so much.
That's right.
That's because of what my parents did. That is what Dr. Johnson, Pastor Johnson did for our family. And so, you know, he had all that word coming in. You had all that word coming in.
Yeah.
You had all that word coming in. And then, you know, when we went to Minnesota, we hooked up with pastors that are associated with Pastor Matt Cammons. And with that Pastor Stephen and Nancy Luxup came in with building on the sound thing, right? Came in music. They would bring in some heavy hitters. I'm talking about Christians who play the nighttime shows for all the comedians, the comedians go, some of them, they play for those dudes, and they come in and they go play for Pastor Steve and Nancy Luxup on the praise and worship. They would teach me sound and teach me music. Everything I know came from the Ministry of Helps and from pastors. Just letting you know, that's the legacy from my parents. That's what it is. That's our legacy. And so when we moved back out here, when I went back to a church out here, I came on and I said, I'm a Christian, right? I don't need to be the guy out on the keys. Just let me know where to go, because that's what my parents taught me. That's what Dr. Johnson taught me, wherever needed. So I went on to the praise and worship team, and then we started trying to build things, what we're trying to do now for Pastor Trevor over at that church. It didn't really quite work out the way that that I envisioned it, but the pastor wanted to go this one direction, and this is where I'm not trying to do a bunny trail, Pastor. I'm just God moved us out of that church. That's the best way to say it. Huh? Yeah. So God moved us out of that church, and we ended up here. Amen. Right? Amen. So here I'm in the middle of, when you come from San Diego to Fresno, it's like moving out in the middle of the desert, right? You're like, right? You know what I mean? Not to put anybody down. It's just kind of palm trees and ocean to this. I don't know. Right? Farmland. There you go. That's farmland, right? So then I walk in, and the first time I walk into this church, right? Because I had a really, really nice discussion, right? Put it lightly, nice discussion. Like, we're going to go to the Merced Church. That's what we're not going to go to this church because it's 10 minutes away. And we walked in and we were like, no, this is our church. And so we walked in, and then Pastor asked me a bunch of questions. And he said, hey, could you do this? Yes. Could you do that? Yes. Why? Because my parents taught me. That's what my parents taught me, right? Yeah. That's what Pastor taught me. Another pastor, and all these pastors taught me. That's where the flow comes from, right? So then Pastor's like, hey, what have you done in the past? And so I told him everything I did in Minnesota. I told him everything I did for Dr. Johnson. And glory be to God for those pastors. Yeah. Not because it's nothing I did, right? So Pastor's like, I have a vision.
You were faithful.
Yeah. Yes, Pastor. And Pastor's like, I have this vision. And actually, the way it worked is Pastor Jen did something, and she goes, Andrew one night brought his phone in, and it had a song on it. And I said, and I remember that night, and I said, Pastor Trevor, I don't mean to be rude. I have this song. I don't know what to do with it. Like, it just came in. It took me like 2-3 days to wrote like a chorus of the song. I don't have words. I don't have nothing. Can you listen to it? And you listen to it, and then Pastor Jen's like, hey, how did you do that? Right? Yeah. That's how I remember it. I could be wrong because my wife remembers things better. So I bet Pastor Jen remembers things better than I do about how it happened. But then Pastor Trevor's like, hey, what do you think about stepping forward into recording? I said, yeah, I already know how to do that. All because of all these ministries. That's right. Yeah. All this ministry of helps. Right? Yeah. So we took the software. We did one trial with him. He goes, hey, we want to do this now. And that's when, I don't have the vision that Pastor has, but that's when the Purcells came, and that's when the Beltrans came, and that's where all these core people came. And we started recording, and we came back. I came back from mobilization, and I came back, and we started going in. And I got to tell you, the first time it's about the first or second time we recorded, I'll probably try to end with this. When Pastor was up there, because we were both trying to figure this out. Yeah. We were struggling. He did this one song, and I was just like, I am amazed about how long God took a little kid right from Virginia, moved him to San Diego, since he was 7, put the word in him, transferred him to Minnesota to go work with a bunch of musicians, right? Yeah. And then go transfer him back here. And who would have thought that you would be in Fresno? I didn't. Yeah. Not a chance, right? And then you come in, and it's like, Pastor's like, hey, do you want to do these certain things? Absolutely. Why? Because the ministry of helps. That's right. And the pastor and my parents. Yeah. Amen. Yeah. Amen. Yeah. I don't own that skill set because I'm awesome, right? But that's what my pastor and that's what my parents, that's just the legacy. So
Yeah.
I love just sitting down and giving back and trying to sow into the ministry of helps here because that's what I know, right?
Amen.
And that's
Amen.
what you wanted to share, right,
Yes,
sir?
sir.
And so when you hear this project, I hope that you hear Pastor Trevor the way God wants to hear Pastor Trevor, because of the amount of service that we have at this church and all the ministry of helps helping to bring this vision in Fresno. Amen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amen.
And anyway, I was just I was saying, but that's just the legacy that my
Yeah.
parents did,
Amen.
and that's all I got to share.
Amen, brother.
Praise the Lord. I hope you heard him.
Yeah.
It's because of his parents bringing him to church. And that's our kid's story. Bring them when they're young, whether they want to go or not.
Yeah.
And you know, for the size, amount of people we have in this church, I remember before we started this church, we got a word from another pastor. And the pastor said that God was going to bring us people who are fully trained to help us. We weren't going to have to train up everybody for every department. And I could say it for Brother Andrew and his family, for Sister Debbie, you're back there, and Brother Emery, for the Purcells. Brought people here who already know how to do what they're doing.
Uh-huh.
I was at World Harvest Church for 16 years. Pastor and I we were waiting for someone to come that knew how to work recording equipment.
Right.
Here we are, we have about 20 people, not counting my family. And the Lord brought Brother Andrew. Actually, he brought them, and we had nobody at that point. We had just visitors, and we went for 4 weeks on a Sunday morning with nobody. I mean, nobody. This was in June and July. Nobody was here. And I would preach to our kids. We would get up, and our kids would sing, and I would go to the piano, and we would do, what a mighty God we serve. And they would just be singing it all lined up, all wanting to take a chance with the microphone. You know, they were all a lot younger then. But we still had church, and my wife would teach little simple stories they could grasp. And we said, we're not stopping.
That's
And I would say, Jennifer and kids, God's working on people to come here. We don't know. I didn't know the Lord was going to move Brother Andrew and his sister Ashley and their family from San Diego. I didn't know Sister Jennifer Beltran was going to end up here.
right.
I didn't know that she had turned to her mom at a camp meeting.